How to Study for Exams for Biology 201 Introductory Microbiology. In this PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to be going over how the brain works, Bloom's revised taxonomy, course setup, or how I will be helping you, a sample weekly schedule, and ways to study for the exam, and study group setup. Let's talk about how the brain works. First off, from current neurological studies, we've found that the brain can focus on one thing for, any guesses? Approximately 10 minutes. Now this is an average. If it's something you really enjoy, I've found myself focusing without stop for half an hour or longer. If it's something I hate, it's more like a minute or less. Also, let's talk about current research on short-term memory versus long-term memory. Short-term memory think of it as the RAM of your brain. It's information that you're using right now, but you're not going to need later. So for me, if somebody tells me a phone number and I write it down, I don't remember it after I write it down. It's been in my short-term memory. Long-term memory, on the other hand, is memory that the brain has learned you're going to need over and over and over again. My own cell phone number, I have finally memorized. I can rattle it off for you. When you are taking an exam, your brain, under the stress of taking an exam, dumps short-term memory, and you go with long-term memory. So it's in your benefit to make sure that the information that you need is in long-term memory and not short-term memory. So let's talk about how to work with your brain. First off, lecture versus activities. For this course, I have recorded the lectures so that they are approximately 10 to 15 minutes long. You can stop them when you need to stretch, do something else. You can also listen to them over and over and over again. That will move the information from short-term memory to long-term memory. Also, if you use the information, then it's more likely to, 1, be more interesting, and 2, move it into your long-term memory. If I actually use my cell phone number, or if I've written it down several times, then my brain says, oh, this is something that we've experienced several times, let's move it into long-term memory. So I provide both recorded lectures and activities for you. Memorizing is all fine and good, but when we get to the next slide, usually it's only the bottom portion of Bloom's taxonomy. It's only remembering. You want to move on to applying, using the information. And the more often you do it, the more your brain gets used to applying that particular bit of information. It also helps move it into long-term memory. Now, continuous learning versus cramming. This goes back to the short-term memory versus the long-term memory. If you are continuously studying for the exam, starting today, then the information is going to be in your long-term memory. If you start studying the weekend before you take the test, that's cramming. It's going to be in your short-term memory. You have not exposed yourself to the information enough times to convince your brain that it's important enough to move into the hard drive, the long-term memory. So, yes, this means repetition. Now, a lot of people call this busy work. Now, busy work originated in grade school when your teachers were trying to keep you busy and not disruptive. I have no need to keep you busy. You keep yourself busy enough. But unfortunately, repetition is the only way to move information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So we will be doing a lot of repetition. Now, some people, depending upon the information and how much background you have in the subject, will require less repetition. If the information is brand new, if you've never heard any of this stuff before, it's going to take more repetitions. Say you've already taken a class in chemistry. You've already done some repetitions to learn chemistry, and part of that has been moved into your long-term memory. Then when we hit chemistry in this course, you say, oh yes, I remember this, and it takes fewer repetitions to kind of refresh your memory and to learn the new chemistry information. If you've never taken a chemistry class ever, you're going to have to do the same repetitions that the person who took the chemistry class did, as well as what would be needed for this class. So don't be discouraged if you need to do more than one repetition. Let's talk about the theory of learning. Bloom was a major researcher in this field, and an awful lot of us in education use Bloom's revised taxonomy. Basically, Bloom's taxonomy, which is outlined on the next slide, talks about and is a way of characterizing various levels of thought. Now, in this class, I'm gonna bring you up to applying, because in taking an exam, you have to apply the information to the exam questions. Generally, we won't go all the way to synthesis, but once you complete your education in your chosen field, you should be able to synthesize information. So let's take a look at Bloom's taxonomy, the revised version. The first thing you have to do when learning new information is remember it. That's remembering. That's basically recall previously learned information. Unfortunately, most of us, when we're studying for an exam, we think we're done. But you at least have to move to understanding, which is comprehending the meaning, translation, interpolation, and interpretation of instructions and problems. In other words, be able to state a problem in your own words. That indicates that you understand the information. Next, and we will be doing this in this class, is applying. Use a concept in a new situation or unprompted use of an abstraction. We will be doing this in lab, where you take the information that you've remembered and that you've understood and you apply it. Either you apply it to actually doing something in lab, applying it to answering a test question that you've never seen before, and in life, you do it all the time. You take information that you know and you apply it to novel or new situations that you are experiencing. Now, above applying is analyzing. Personally, I find the definition between these two pretty close. That's where you separate the material concepts into component parts so that its organizational structure may be understood. Now, personally, I think applying and analyzing, I think you have to analyze it to apply it, and if you apply it, then you're analyzing it. That's just me, I'm not Bloom. Now, evaluating is next up. We usually won't get to that point in this class, except for in Chapter 9. You will need to make judgments about the value of ideas or materials. Okay, so there's a warning, we will be evaluating things in Chapter 9. And then at the end, there's creating and synthesis. That's where you build a structure pattern from diverse elements. You put the parts together to form a whole, with emphasis on creating new meaning or structure. Now, like I said, generally speaking, you'll be able to do that with the information that you've learned once you finish your undergraduate, but I won't be requiring you to do that in this class. So let's talk about how the assignments help you study for the exam. So, Learn Smart. Students in the past love Learn Smart. So Learn Smart is kind of like having an electronic tutor. If you get questions on a certain topic wrong, it will keep giving you different questions on that topic until you get it, until you understand it. It does what I can't do. I can't tutor all of you. I wish that I could, but I simply don't have the time. Learn Smart tutors you. It's a wonderful program. Secondly, I have my recorded lectures. Basically, you're getting my expertise in the area that we're talking about, and like I said, I've broken it up into about 10-20 minute segments so that your brain doesn't fry. Also, you can listen to them over and over again. You can pause, take notes, etc. Critical thinking practice. This is in the applying, analyzing portion of Bloom's taxonomy. Basically, what I do is I give you really, really, really hard questions. Harder questions than I'm going to ask you on the exam. If you practice thinking through those and analyzing your own thought process on it and discussing it with other people, then when I ask you easier questions, some of you will think that the test questions are just as hard, so maybe I should say just as hard questions, then you will have practiced it. It's okay to get the wrong answer on the critical thinking practice. I'm not going to mark you down for getting the wrong answer. I will mark you down for getting the wrong answer on the exams. So we practice here, give you an opportunity to practice, to fail, basically, then you can succeed on the exam. Chapter activities. Chapter activities are set up to be in the applying and analysis portions of Bloom's taxonomy. So basically you're taking the information, you're rearranging it, you're resorting it, you're looking through different parts of the textbook to answer the questions. All of this helps you apply the information. This will help you remember it, and it will help you understand it. So Bloom's taxonomy is kind of a cyclic thing. We do have a paper in this course, and the paper is set up for you to basically go over the material that we've covered in class, apply it, there's application again, apply it to a microbe that you've picked that you're interested in. Okay, there's the interest part. If you're interested in something, you're going to focus on it for longer. Apply it to something you're interested in, and that does repetition, so it moves it into your long-term memory. You're rewording it in your own words, shows understanding, and you're applying the information. It all helps you study for the exam. And lastly, I offer makeup and extra credit opportunities that will help you either in this class or will help you in your college career. Now, the makeup / extra credit that I give you is applying the information. These opportunities, which are tied to the chapters, are, you guessed it, applications. They're also repetition. Yes, I'm sneaky that way. So you got to do them while we're doing the chapters. Okay, because otherwise it's not as much benefit if you try to do them all at the end of the semester. Those opportunities that are not tied to a chapter, they may be workshops that CWI is offering throughout the semester. I realize some of you can't get to those. That's why I offer a wide variety of these types of opportunities. There's also visiting scientist lectures. I've got some books that you can check out and write me a one-page summary on it. Just convince me that you read it and you got something out of it. Or if you find an interesting article on a microbe, write a one-page summary, send me the article. I plan on stealing it for use in other areas. And, it's once again, you're applying what you're learning to what you see outside of class. Now, here is a sample weekly schedule, or, in other words, what you need to do to study. Saturday, I would preview the next assignments, see what I've got coming up. I would watch the recorded lecture videos for the next week, and I would review the textbook chapter for the next week. As you see, as we go along, you will have already read the textbook chapter before this. Then I would study for the next exam. Later on, I will give some ideas on what works for me to study. You can insert whatever works for you. Now, you'll notice I skipped Sunday. Brain research shows that if you try to do something 7 days a week, you're going to burn out on it. So you need a day off. Personally, being Christian, Sunday's my day off. If you're Jewish, take Saturday off. If you're Muslim, take Friday off. Pick your day of the week. So moving on to Monday, I would answer the questions for this week's critical thinking practice. I would save it in a Word document. Then I would work on the paper. I would check the schedule to see what's required to be submitted this week or what I suggest working on this week. Then I would study for the next exam. See the repetition? See the continuous studying coming into play? On Tuesday, I would post the questions for the critical thinking practice on the critical thinking discussion board, and I would not wait until 11:30 at night to do this. I would do this in the morning personally, but I'm a morning person. I would start the Learn Smart assignment by reading the appropriate chapter in the textbook, and this will be the chapter for the next week. The Learn Smart assignments take longer if you go in cold and just try to do them. If you read through the textbook, the Learn Smart assignments don't take as long. That's just the way they work. Then I would study for the next exam. Wednesday, I would comment on the critical thinking discussion board. I would do at least one comment, or more if you would like. I would work on the Learn Smart assignment on Blackboard. Then I would study for the next exam. Thursday, I would finish the Learn Smart assignment, hopefully in the morning, not 11 o'clock at night, right before the due date. I would work on this week's chapter activity. Then I would comment on the critical thinking practice discussion board, and then I'd study for the next exam. Friday, I would submit the chapter activity once I finished it. Once again, wouldn't do that at 11 p.m. I would comment on the critical thinking practice discussion board. I would do any makeup or extra credit if you have time or if you need to do it. And then I would study for the next exam. Then Saturday, I'd start all over again. Now, this sample schedule, you don't have to follow it, but it does have you starting early on assignments, and it has you submitting assignments before the deadline or on the day of the deadline. Now, here are ways to study for the exam. Like I said, you may have other ways that work better for you, but I wanted to give you some ideas. As a part of your Connect code, you have access to SmartBook. SmartBook is the best way to read a textbook. It's not LearnSmart, but it's done by the same people, and it's basically an electronic version of your textbook with a tutor walking you through the important parts and how to effectively read the textbook. It's a wonderful program. I would review the topic objectives frequently and make sure that I could answer them without looking in the book or be able to do them. I would redo the chapter activities or do your own. The more times you apply the information, the more you're going to remember it, and the better you're going to do in applying the information on the exam. I would rewatch or re-listen to the recorded lectures. I would read the textbook with active note-taking. Now, what's active note-taking? Basically, when you're reading the textbook, you take notes. Then the next time you read the textbook, you do it again. You don't keep the notes necessarily. They're just a way to have you doing something while you're reading. I'm sure you've all had the same situation that I have, of where I've read through a full page and I look at it and I don't remember reading it. I don't remember what I've read, and it was basically a waste of my time, and it's time to close the book. If I take notes, it helps me focus and it helps me remember because I'm doing something while I'm reading the textbook. Also, I would think about the critical thinking practice questions and how they could be changed on the exam. I love to do that. Take a critical thinking practice question and change the question so that a different answer option is possible. So think through, how could the question be worded so that this other answer is the correct answer? Or the answer that I thought was correct, how would the question need to be worded for that option to be correct? You are applying the information, you're thinking critically about it, helps you learn the material. And then there's the tutoring center. Gotta love the tutoring center. Not all of you can make it onto campus on a regular basis, but you do have to be here on Tuesday and Thursday. So if that would benefit you, I would set up appointments either before or after lab. Study groups. It's not easy to set up study groups. You all have different times that you meet, but if you can set up a study group, it helps. If you're teaching other people, if you are saying what you've learned out loud, it helps you fill in the blanks in what you've learned. If you're not able to set up a study group, we're going to say that these group of people at the zoo are in a study group, then talk to a pet. Hopefully you don't have a lion for a pet, but you may have a cat, you may have a dog. Talk to a baby, talk to your family members. It doesn't matter if they understand or even care about what you're studying. It helps you verbalize it, and if you're teaching something, like I said, it fills in the blanks on what you need to learn. So that is my advice on how to study for the exam. If you have any questions on this, let me know.